All right, Willie. So you spend most of your time in the NFL in Cincinnati, but your final year you spent in Baltimore with the Ravens. How did that single year compare to the time you spent in Cincinnati?
Well, it kind of reminded me of Elder with all the purple going on. So we had a lot more purple in Baltimore than it is here. It was different because I had a chance to play against guys that I competed against for 12 years. So, walking to the locker room the first day, my visit, I was kind of nervous because their locker room was like a castle. Their facility was like a big castle, the Ravens Castle they call it. So I walked in there, met Ozzie Newsome, talked to Ozzie, the staff, and I was hesitant to go downstairs into the locker room until our former coach here, Hugh Jackson, who was the quarterback coach that year, came and got me from upstairs and brought me downstairs. And the entire locker room just called my name out, yelled my name out, Big Willie. It was Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, all those guys. So I felt at home then, but I was kind of hesitant at first because, like I said, I fought those guys for 12 years. And to go play with them the last year was kind of an unreal year. Had the most fun I had in a long time. We won a bunch of football games, made it to the championship game, but it was hard because my heart was still here in Cincinnati, and playing for what we thought was the enemy for a long time. You know what I mean? Then finally making those guys my brothers was kind of a surreal feeling. Mm-hmm.
All right, so playing at Auburn for college, two-time first-team All-SEC, what would you say was the biggest transition from Auburn to the NFL?
From the NFL, the food, no, but no, just more time spent going with football stuff. Like football in the NFL is an all-day business. Where in college you have classes and it's kind of part of your day. In the NFL, it's your full day. All week, with your one day off on Tuesdays. But it's a full-day job. Come in the morning, put in work at 9 a.m. There's no classes to go to. Your classes in the NFL is football. Your meeting times. We spend more time in meeting rooms than practice time. So just learning the pace of that. My guy Joe Walter is here now, learning how to take notes from Joe Walters and being a young guy, watching film and playing teams 2 times a year. Where Auburn I played Bama once a year, but here I play the Ravens and the Steelers twice a year. So learning how to keep a notebook of notes on guys you play against and just keep studying your tendencies. You learn real fast that football is a business once you get in the NFL.
Recently you started the Willie Anderson Lineman Academy. What inspired you to start that?
My son was a receiver in high school. So my son finished up at Georgia Tech several years ago. So I spent about from 2011 to 2015, receiving training with him, DB training, quarterback training, and during that period of time, parents would ask me to help their kids out. And I was like, I can't because my son is so far behind. I'm helping my own son out. So once I got him graduated and off to Georgia Tech, I started my academy. And I wanted to start it at the high school level to help high school linemen out because I felt like the high school lineman was the most, under-taught position in all of football. I think it's still the most important position. The hardest thing to learn to me in all of football is how to block. I think playing quarterback is the most mentally toughest thing, but the toughest, most physical thing to do is to be an offensive lineman. So at the younger levels, the kids weren't getting the training I thought they should be getting. And it's kind of like providing and being a math tutor for a kid. We tell parents, say, hey, go to your school, but come to us for extra training, extra help. So I just thought the young kids needed help at that position, and we started doing that. And since then, we've been averaging about 13 to 15 kids every year getting scholarships out of our academy. And we had one of our biggest pupils is my guy Paris Johnson here from Cincinnati, who was a 6th pick in the draft 2 years ago to the Cardinals.
For playing football your whole life, what would you say is your most memorable game? Because we were talking before, either like Alabama, Auburn, like the Iron Bowl, or playing for the Ravens coming back to Cincinnati. What would you say is your favorite?
The most emotional game was coming back to Cincinnati. I actually cried in the what you call it, coming out of the locker room. I cried. But the most memorable would have to be my first time playing against Alabama as a kid. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, where everyone in the city of Mobile are diehard Bama fans. So for me to pick Auburn was a big deal for me to pick Auburn out of high school. I was #1 player in the country. And I picked Auburn at a time that they were a bad team. And Bama had just won the '92 national championship my senior year in high school. So picking Auburn on Alabama was a big deal for me. So the first time I got a chance to see that crimson jersey as an opponent, I grew up as a kid love Alabama. The first time I saw them is when I was 18 years old, my freshman year in '93 at Auburn. We beat them to go 11-0, but we were on probation my freshman year, so we couldn't go to a championship game nor to a bowl game. So, but beating them and going 11-0 was a surreal feeling. I'll never forget it, because it meant so much to me to beat Alabama because everybody in my hometown was diehard Bama fans, and they all hated me.
Obviously, since you retired, the game has evolved a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the current offensive line play state in the NFL?
It's definitely different. I came in the league in '96. The league was a running football league. Your running backs were your stars. You know what I mean? The way you guys see the QBs now, back then was all running backs. Like in our division alone, there was Corey Dillon, Jerome Bettis, Eddie George, Jamal Lewis. These guys were some superstar running games. So in order to win football games, you had to run the ball. Where now you see teams now, they run the ball now to get a quarterback a break. You know what I mean? It's not really trying to establish a running game because the passing game is so dominant. So that kind of started my last several years in the league because we had Corey Dillon early on, and then once Carson Palmer got here, the mindset of the whole organization kind of changed. It became to let's protect Carson at all costs, give him a good offensive line, and make the running game help Carson out instead of the running game being the reason why we win football games. So it turned to a passing game. It turned to, protect the quarterback at all costs. And the fans like it. But I think as far as lineman development, the linemen are different now because the linemen are not really built to be dominant run blockers. And when you do see teams that do that, they destroy teams like Philly. Like Philly is one of the few teams that's built to be a running football team. And I think the rest of the league is not built to stop them because it's been built to be passing and to defend the pass. So once you find a running football team who can dominate running the football, like similar to the Ravens and the Bills, they win consistently every year with a running game, but they still have dominant quarterbacks.
So 13 years in the NFL, and you played against a lot of defenders. Who would you say is the best one you've played against, and do you have any rivals with one individual player that you looked forward to?
I played against a lot of guys. I played against some great guys. The hardest, it was two main guys that was really two hard guys. One didn't beat me, but he beat me up. I told Joe this other day. It was Reggie White. You know what I mean? I grew up a big fan of Reggie White. Became a Christian guy because of Reggie White out of college. And to play somebody that size he's probably the only guy I played against who was stronger than I was. That he can really physically manhandle you and just do what he wanted to do with you. But I was a big guy, and I shut him down. But I tell people all the time after the game, I felt as if my skeleton was hurting. that he was running into me so much. Such a big dude, he was running into me. But the toughest guy I had was probably the smallest guy, a guy by the name of Robert Mathis, played for the Colts. He was opposite of Dwight Freeney. Mathis was about 6 feet tall. At the time, I was an older man. I was an old man in the league, and we had never faced 6 foot tall defensive ends. Now they're prominent in the league now, but when I came in the league, everybody was 6'4", 6'5", 280, 290. They were monsters. At the end of my career, once the league turned to a passing league, you started seeing these smaller guys come in as rushers. And Rob Mathis was a guy. He was 6 feet tall, 6'1", 240. And he can do outside spin moves, inside spin moves. You try to punch him, he can duck under your hands. You know what I mean? So he gave guys problems who were bigger, taller guys. And I knew then that, hey, it was time for me to retire. So.
I'm going to do another question. But you said growing up you looked up to Reggie White, and how was that playing against him once you got to the NFL?
It was again. It was surreal because some guys get a chance to play against their idols. They look, as a kid. I saw him as a kid. His dominant years, he was in the 80s. I was a 10, 12, 13-year-old kid. I played him his last year in Green Bay. He was 36, but he led the league in sacks. He had 16, 17 sacks that year. So playing against him, it's like if a basketball kid grew up, you guys watched LeBron all year, all your life, and all of a sudden at 40, you're playing against him. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird because you heard about all his moves, you study all his moves, but now he's doing them against you. You know what I mean? It's a different deal than watching it on TV. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I loved it, man. I was scared for my life. I was 23, he was 36. Like I said, I shut him down, but physically after the game, I felt like my lungs were collapsed. I felt my skeleton was hurting. and you knew you'd been into a dogfight with one of the greatest rushers ever in football. To me, he's the greatest rusher ever to me. His numbers were cut short because he played, I think, 3 or 4 years in the USFL. But if he played his entire time in the NFL, he would be the all-time sack leader by far. Unbelievable guy, unbelievable man, too.
Yeah. Nowadays, especially with the Bengals, the offensive line gets so much hate, really, so much criticism. What do you think is a very common misconception that the media gets about playing offensive line?
Well, first, in Cincinnati, it's hard playing offensive line here in Cincinnati. For some reason, it just is. Like, especially when we have a quarterback. If we have a quarterback back there who's a golden boy, it's so hard because people just only see him and only care about him, and which is rightfully so, because whether it be Joe Burrow, whether it be Carson Palmer, whether it's Boomer Esiason, these guys kind of run your organization. But like I said earlier, playing O-line to me is the toughest position in all of football, to play and coach. I think as little kids, when you put little kids in the 6th, 7th grade, 8th grade football, no one wants to play offensive line. They all think it's a punishment. You put them on the offensive line, and kids don't learn till they get to about 10th, 11th grade. Hey, I can go to college on a scholarship playing offensive line. But as a young guy, it's not celebrated as much because when a kid is in the 5th grade, his mom is driving him to practice or dad from practice to games. His mom and dad doesn't hear his name called on the airwaves like his teammate John, who was playing running back, his name called. So I think early on, kids have to understand how valuable it is, but the media has to portray it differently too. Once the media start portraying it differently, I think kids and fans will start seeing, because it's one of the most unknown things in football. Like it's like being in freaking calculus sometimes with the verbiage and the vocabulary guys using and the techniques. It's strange, so people don't know enough about it to kind of report about it. So it's sexier and more fun to talk about the quarterback throwing the ball, because no one goes outside with their son and practice blocking. Let's go outside and hit the sled or something, son. No. They're throwing the ball, they're rushing the pass and catch it. No one goes outside to block. You know what I mean? So I think once more people are educated about how the fundamentals of it is really, I call it a science. And once you learn it, it's very interesting to learn. And once you learn it, it's kind of fun to learn. Once you learn how to defend yourself against a guy who's bringing a pass rush move against you, or you learn how to move a guy against his will in the run game. It's really the fun thing once you learn it, but I think on the early stages, the kids see it as punishment. So, and the media doesn't broadcast it enough to make it fun. You know what I mean?
So as a college and professional athlete, you travel a lot, see a lot of new stadiums. What would you say is the loudest stadium you've ever played in both college and the NFL?
College, definitely Florida. Florida, the swamp scared us. Like I said, we had beat them my freshman year to go 11-0. We started off 9-0 my sophomore year. We ended up beating them. They were the #1 ranked team in the country. We beat them at Florida for the first time. Anybody had beat them in like 2 years. And I remember being in warm-up. My Coach Trickett was doing offensive lineman warm-up drills where we were down in the end zone warming up, and he's behind us. So I'm going first. I'm in my stands, and he's saying, my stands waiting for his cadence. I look behind me, and he's screaming, "Go, go, go!" And I couldn't hear him. He was standing right here. And so we all stared at each other like, "Oh, shit, we in trouble. If we can't hear him standing right here, it's gonna be trouble," because we got Kevin Carter. They have like 3 first-round picks on their D-line. They're monsters over there. So he kind of brought us up. We all got huddled up together. He said, "Look, once you start running the football, that crowd's gonna be quiet," because we panicked. As a lineman, the worst thing it is for a lineman is not be able to hear. As far as pros, I want to say, the Colts, because they cheated. We found out years later the Colts were pumping sound in the freaking airways. Like, it was definitely loud. So imagine being down 14 points, Peyton Manning quarterbacking. You got Dwight Freeney and Mathis pass rushing you, and you can't hear. And they're all this tall. and on your movement, they're gone. So the Colts definitely, because they were cheating. We found out years later that they were pumping sound through the speaker. So the Colts, yes, it's unbelievable. Those dome stadiums are not fair. They're not fair.
All right, so obviously with your incredible amount of time spent in Cincinnati, what do you think of Skyline Chili? Do you eat it every time you come back? If not, what would be your go-to meal
You guys gonna
every
get
time
mad at
you're back
me.
here?
I'm not a Skylines chili guy. I had it like once. I said it on Twitter every year, and people get mad at me on Twitter every year. I was like, no, I'm not a Skylines chili guy. What's my go-to? My boy Floyd Walker, my brother Floyd Walker, and Corey Blunt, my partner, they own Happy's Pizza here in town, so I love Happy's Pizza. Before before their pizza got started, I was a big fan of, is it La Rosa's? I was a big La Rosa's fan, but I can't say that because my guys own Happy's Pizza now. So definitely, before then, on Fridays, I was getting my La Rosa's pizzas pretty much every Friday. You know what I mean? So big La Rosa's. Surprisingly, the food here in Cincinnati, I love the food here in Cincinnati. Just not a big chili fan of Skyline chili. I'm sorry, guys, I'm not. I'm from the South.
One more. Breaks my heart a little bit.
I know I do. My bad, man.
As a professional athlete, a bunch of kids look up to you. So what advice would you give, like, little linemen trying to get to the NFL? 13 seasons, giving up 16 sacks your whole career. What advice would you give them? Like, if I got in a right tackle position right now, hit you with my little move. Like, what advice would you give to us?
First of all, if you're going to do anything, you got to love doing it. And I mentioned Paris Johnson earlier. Paris was one of the first kids, that I, besides myself, he was the first kid. I've met kids since then, but I met Paris at 15 years old, and he came to Atlanta to live with me for 2 weeks, and we trained for 2 weeks in my house. And he was one of the most obsessed kids I ever seen about being an offensive lineman. Matter of fact, he was the first kid I ever seen that was that obsessed about being a lineman than like I was. As a kid, I was super obsessed with sports. Like, I loved it so much, I watched everything. So when I say I watched Reggie White, as a kid, I wanted to be a defensive lineman, like all kids. I wanted to be an offensive lineman. But once I became a lineman, I wanted to be really great as a lineman. I don't want to be good, I want to be great. So I studied everything. We didn't have YouTube back then. We didn't have professional athletes putting out videos that we can go watch and study and learn your craft from. We didn't have that. So the guys and me who are fans, I believe God blesses you if you're a fan of that and you're obsessed with it so much, things start to flow towards you and you get blessings from it. But a lot of times young kids don't, they kind of go at it, not really fans of the game. You know what I mean? So whatever it is, if it's being a reporter, whatever it may be a fan of it. Be a fan of it and study it and go look at it and be obsessed with being great at it. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things I did. I looked at sports so much that I emulated guys and wanted to be like guys and tried to talk like them. We saw what people laughed at Kobe Bryant about Jordan, but he did exactly what Jordan did. He told himself, I'm going to do exactly what he does. And he practiced and trained and studied film till he got it down packed, but he became great himself. So to become great, you got to love something and be obsessed with it. And whatever it is, if it's offensive line play, you'll get better at it. But you got to love it, to put your passion into it. You got to watch it, study it, and be involved in it. That's my advice.
Very good. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good job, guys. No problem, man. No problem.
Thank you.
No problem.